For at least one game, the Nets are back, baby. 120-101 on the road against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cam Thomas lights it up. Mikal Bridges gets back to his scoring ways, and the Nets are once again in the W column. We're going to break it all down. But first, theme music.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome back to the Locked On Nets podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I am Doug Norrie, owner and operator at DFSR.com. If you need projections still for the NBA as we roll through FanDuel and DraftKings, make sure you head on over to DFSR.com. No Adam Armbrecht on the podcast today. That's okay. We'll fly solo. Want to let you know this episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada. Go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at NissanUSA.com. We're coming at you Sunday night following a gasp Nets win. Can't believe it. After a rough game on Saturday night, to say the least, against the Hornets, where thank goodness we don't podcast after that one because it was looking pretty bleak in the old Norrie household and Armbrecht household, and maybe just Nets households in general coming out of that game against the Hornets, where it starts to feel like the Nets are maybe never going to win another game. Mikal Bridges really struggles. Cam Thomas on a minutes limit, even though they're able to win all of his minutes. And it's starting to feel, more and more like the Nets maybe aren't going to get this done over the course of the rest of the season, or maybe they're not even going to be able to win another game. Although that's probably unrealistic, though, in the downturns of the season when the team is losing, it's sometimes hard to see them ever win again. But that's all right. They go into Cleveland here on Sunday night and end up taking care of the Cavaliers 120-101. So what that the Cavs didn't have Donovan Mitchell? So what that they didn't have Evan Mobley? So what that they didn't have Max Strus? We don't care about those things. Nets have lost to lesser teams for sure over the course of the year, but it didn't happen tonight with Cam Thomas and Mikal Bridges combining finally for efficient shooting games between the two of them. Cam Thomas finishes with 29. I want to talk about him at length, obviously. Mikal Bridges finishes with 25 of his own in 35 minutes. In the end, the Nets are able to get into the bench because of the blowout and end up getting off the schneid and getting a W. Obviously, the big talk in this game is Cam Thomas, who just absolutely leaves his body in the second half of this one. Struggles a little bit out of the gate and from the field, 1 for 5 for shooting to start, though he was getting to the line, was 5 for 6 early on. And that's one thing you always can sort of trust of Cam, is that he's able to draw fouls. And maybe you want to say, he gets a pretty light whistle. I mean, look, he's 22 and he hasn't played tons of minutes, and he does get to the line. I would say still a pretty decent amount. And he doesn't overly gesticulate around not getting fouls, though sometimes he does. And overall, though, that is one of his skills, is being able to draw contact. So he's able to get to the line early, and then late in the second half. In the second half is when he really turns it on. In the third quarter and into the fourth quarter, where he's just burying threes, ultimately ends up burying a catch and shoot, sort of like heave that gets him really kind of pretty pumped. You don't see Cam Thomas get really overly animated at times. He's a pretty just kind of, I would say, even-keeled kind of guy. Never gets too up, never seems to get too down. Just kind of has one singular demeanor, I would say, after watching him for a few years now, that for sure seems like what he is. He's just a singular demeanor kind of guy. And he got really, really pumped after that last three-pointer, and he should. I mean, this was second game back from injury. The Nets have really needed his scoring. They've looked bogged down on offense too often, where it just kind of stagnates. It doesn't look like they're going to be able to get anything late in the shot clock. They don't really have a lot of places to turn. Obviously, Mikal Bridges has really been struggling from the field. They desperately needed Cam Thomas's scoring kind of the whole season, but specifically over these last few weeks, where with the ankle injury, you could just see it on the court. They just need another scorer. The team without him, barely with him, I barely have enough scorers. Definitely without him, they don't. And the offense has struggled because of it. But tonight, just another window into the sort of the upside that he has in the scoring department. And also just in overall playmaking, it's something that has consistently gotten better, I think, over the course of this season, specifically the second half of the season, where we've seen him become more of a ball distributor as well. The assist numbers have kind of basically steadily climbed all throughout this season. Two assists per game in December, 2 assists per game in November, up to 2.4 in December, 2.6 in January. He gets up to 3.8 in February, and now, gets 5 assists here tonight overall. He only had 2 assists against Hornets, but I will say that probably was a little bit lack of, he had some ball distribution in there. Some of those guys just didn't knock down shots. But ultimately, if we can see this progression for him as more of a playmaker, it gets easier and easier to see sort of the upside on his overall talent. And that's what you got tonight. 29 points, 5 assists, 7 rebounds. Couple sequences early that kind of highlighted this, couple sequences late that I want to get into as well, with just sort of things that he was doing really well. Early on, he had 2 really nice sequences where he's on a fast break and he's going into 2 guys and ultimately decides to kick it out, sees Mikal Bridges on the trailer and is able to kick it back out, doesn't try to force it into 2 bodies, and Mikal Bridges ends up knocking down the 3. He had another look early in the game too, where he takes into the lane and kicks it out to an open shooter as well, doesn't try to force a shot. These are really, really good signs from Cam that we've been seeing more and more over the course of the season. Able to pass out of double teams quicker. Cleveland did try to blitz him and Mikal Bridges at times tonight. They were definitely trying to trap Cam. He was able to read those pretty quickly, get himself out either to the center at the nail, or just be able to sort of kick it out strong side to make sure the ball was out of his hands pretty quickly rather than get bogged down. And that's really good because the defenses can see that he's going to be able to make that adjustment quick. It gets a little bit harder to keep going to the trap over and over again because you're not really going to win too much if he's just going to be able to get out of it quick, because now all of a sudden you have pass rotation and all of a sudden there's an open shooter, right? The math just doesn't work. If there's 2 guys on the ball and the ball is no longer with that guy anymore, then there's someone open somewhere else. The quicker that can happen for Cam, the better that we're going to see the offense perform. So I thought that was those were some really nice progressions that he walked through early in the game. He was also able to walk some just through nice progressions in terms of screening action. Day'Ron Sharpe early on in the game was able to set a screen and then rescreen, where Cam was really, really patient and sort of took his time waiting for the screen and the switch to materialize, and was able to really cook Jarrett Allen off that. And then basically the next possession, Day'Ron Sharpe comes with another screen and Cam instantly rejects that screen and blows by Jarrett Allen. And the reason why that screen rejection is such a nice look is because now it really keeps the defense on their toes about sort of how they're going to be able to defend that on a high pick and roll. And if Cam's going to be able to run high pick and roll, where he's going to be able to sort of induce a lob threat from one of those bigs, then we're really, really starting to unlock some cool stuff with him. So really, really pretty encouraging, I think, overall game. And this is look, we all see the shots that he made in the second half too, right? He scored 29 points. Obviously, we could sit here and talk about, the catch and shoot 3-pointers, which I could give you the stat here in a second on that, but the catch and shoot threes, just the overall scoring in the second half. Yeah, that's the easy stuff to see. And I think we all kind of know he already has that in his bag. Being able to have this other stuff as well just makes it even more promising. And the catch and shoot threes up to 45% on the year this year. He was up 40%. So we're looking at more than a 10% uptick in the catch and shoot threes, which means we're just kind of heading into the all-around scoring, all-around threat level. But look, we already knew that. And this is why the Nets have missed him so much over the course of the season when he hasn't been around. They just need someone else to take the heat off Bridges. They need someone else to be able to sort of late in the shot clock get shots. They need someone that they can just turn to on different possessions where they can let him cook against an opposing big, or a Sam Merrill who is able to cook over and over in this game. These are the things that your team, especially a team like the Nets, that struggled so mightily this year. And look, they've struggled with Cam on the court also at times too. It's he's not just, this isn't a total, superhero kind of guy here, but clearly on this team and the way they're currently constructed, they don't have anyone else even close to sort of what he can do in the scoring department when he's really feeling it. And that was definitely the case tonight. I want to talk about Mikal Bridges and what he was bringing to the table here, just the overall energy that the Nets had in this game. I want to talk about that here in a second. First, let's tell you about our friends over in Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take that adventure to the next level. Maybe you're into the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder. It's got room up to 8, expansive cargo capacity, advanced available 4x4 capability, 284 horsepower. Come on now, with up to 6,000 pounds of towing. That's where the adventure calls. The Pathfinder is there to answer. Obviously, the 2024 Nissan Rogue, that's perfect for city driving, can get great escapes as well, get yourself out of the city. It's got the class exclusive Google built-in to always updating assistant. You can call for almost anything right there in the car. It's gone to the days of connecting to your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, Google Play Store, all built right into the 2.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system, baby. That's the Nissan Rogue. You got the Nissan Pathfinder or the Nissan Armada. You can go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. All right, obviously having Cam Thomas around is a help to Mikal Bridges. Look, we saw Mikal struggle again against Charlotte the other night, and he's gone through a really, really rough stretch of shooting. The splits were really pretty bad. It's like 38, 26, 65 or something like that heading into this game since the All-Star break. Something like that. I mean, it's basically what they were. Shouldn't have said it like that. Like the splits were really, really poor. We've watched it on the court for him for a long time now, where it's just something we've talked about outside of that game against Atlanta, the 38-point outburst. By the way, those splits included that game. I mean, the 19 points a game. It's been a really, really rough stretch for him in terms of shooting. Without Thomas on the court, like it's hard. Like the offense has very few places to go. It's hard for him to really unlock any part of his game. Even against Charlotte, where he scores 19 points on 6 of 18 shooting in 41 total minutes. You're like, man, this is pretty rough. But the good news on these last couple games is that when Thomas is on the court, they just have enough firepower, one, to withstand the Cam if Mikal is going to have poorer shooting nights. Now, I think that if they could have just kept Cam on the court a little bit more against Charlotte and not had that minutes limit, maybe they just win the game. They kind of limited his minutes to right around 30. He even had a little comment about that after the game. They were plus, I think they were plus 13 with the starting lineup in that Charlotte game. That's Schroeder, Mikal Bridges, Cam Thomas, DFS, and Nick Claxton. Like that lineup was winning. It was kind of every other lineup that was losing. They were really plus with Cam Thomas on the court and basically losing every minute that he wasn't on against Charlotte. So maybe like the minutes limit isn't on and they're able to win that game. And then tonight, where Cam is on the court and they're sharing the court more, the minutes limit's off. They get to play a little bit more together. 9 for 14 for Bridges tonight, 5 for 8 from 3. Had it going early, which is a good sign, able to knock down a few of those where you're starting to feel like maybe this can be a game where he's not going to get totally bogged down. 25 points altogether, 5 assists, 5 rebounds. When they're able to shoot like this, when they're able to kind of put the scoring together, the Cavs, the version of the Cavs without all these guys missing, that is a really scary team. Obviously not. Look, no Donovan Mitchell, no Evan Mobley, no Max Strus to some degree. So they got old friend Karis LeVert entering the starting lineup. They got George Niang. We'll talk about that. Got a little chippy there early in the game. So this is clearly not like the highest level Cavs team, but we've seen the Nets lose to worse. But when Bridges and Thomas are able to share the court, at least the scoring punch can be there. It can take a little of the pressure off Mikal. He desperately needs sort of like a place to just be able to unlock some of his offense. He needs it to get a little bit easier. I wonder if it's just like having Cam Thomas means that in his own mind, like the pressure's off a little bit more too. Not to say like Mikal Bridges caves to pressure. It's just mean look, he knows that the team needs his scoring. He was really boosted up as a borderline superstar going into the season. I think we can kind of see that that's not the case, but it's a heavy load to shoulder just in terms of sort of the weight of the team and the weight of the franchise. And I do wonder if when Cam Thomas is on the court, or at least now coming back after having missed him for some time, where it starts to feel like, oh, okay, I don't need to do everything here. There's another guy on the team that can score. It's a little bit easier for me now, right? I wonder if some of that, there is a trickle down effect of having those guys or having Cam back in the lineup, because it looked a little bit easier tonight. Look, again, some of these defensive stuff that they're throwing at him is not going to be all that difficult. Cavs are obviously a really, really compromised team. But overall, if the Nets can sort of move a little downhill with some of the stuff on the offensive end, where they can lighten the load a little bit on Bridges, where it's just not so much where he feels like he needs to score, where he needs to take tough shots all the time. Yeah, like there are ways that you can see the path for them at least not being as bad as they've been over the short term, right? Like this has been a really rough stretch couple months, a really rough season altogether. If you're a Nets fan, if you're still hanging with the team every night like we are, this has been a labor of love at times, or for a lot of it. It's been tough to watch. They get bogged down a lot. Like the energy levels are low. Like overall, the shots just aren't open shots aren't going in, right? Contested shots aren't going in. It can just feel like a real struggle. And so for tonight, to see where Bridges is kind of finding it to be a little bit easier, where the team obviously is playing with a little less weight on their shoulders, or however you want to describe it in sort of just general sports speak. I think we kind of were seeing that happen tonight, and it was refreshing. It's just refreshing. Again, if you're coming here every night and you've watched Mikal, through this stretch since the All-Star break or even before, and wonder like, hey, what's happening to his value? What's happening to him? Is he playing too many minutes? I mean, I think that's probably pretty clear that he is, right? He's averaging 40 minutes a game here in March. And none of these games are even in overtime, right? Like, so he's playing too many minutes. He's played a ton of minutes over the course of his whole career. You never miss a game. You're going to play a lot of minutes, right? You make the playoffs for a lot of the time you're with the Suns. You're going to play a lot of minutes. You play FIBA basketball, which the minute stuff isn't even included in that. That's going to wear you down over time. And I think there's been concerns for Bridges over whether he's getting worn down. I think it'd be insane if he wasn't, honestly. Like, how could he not be worn down at this point? Having to just, the expectations that were sort of set after the second half of last year, or excuse me, after the trade deadline last year, plus the way things came into this year, plus just sort of how it's gone over the course of the year. Like, how could it not feel like a lot? And then you combine all the minutes and all the miles that he's put on his legs. So I think that like all this kind of, the long story short on this is, over these last games for the rest of the season, if they can keep Cam and Mikal both healthy, right? If they can both play, are they going to win all the games? No, of course not. That's unrealistic. But could we see more games where they're able to combine this kind of scoring efficiency and just overall scoring to be able to keep themselves in games and maybe pull out some wins? Yeah, look, that's in their range of outcomes for sure, right? They combined for 54 points tonight. Shooting was pretty efficient. Ball distribution was there. 5 assists for Cam, 5 for Mikal. 8 overall for Schroeder. The team was definitely finding ways to get each other the ball. 33 assists overall for the team. You can see the offense is just clicking a little better. There's a little bit more life for really kind of everybody in terms of movement. So really good sign for Mikal. I think it's going to help him. I think that even if it wasn't felt earlier in the season, I wonder if this stretch, like I said, without Cam Thomas, or excuse me, getting him back into the mix, if there's like this realization sort of maybe for everybody, it's like, okay, like we have this other guy here that can take away the problems that we clearly have in this offense when he's not around. And if that can be the case, and specifically it can be the case for Bridges, you have to feel really, really good about, okay, let me pump the brakes there. You don't have to feel great. You can feel better, I think, about tuning in with this team over the course of this last run, right? 25-39 right now, 64 games into this, 18 games left to go. I think you can feel better about like Bridges' chances to kind of maybe have a late push here in terms of efficiency. And obviously Cam Thomas, if he's just going to lead the team in scoring from here on out, which probably I would say is likely to happen. I think the Nets are going to be in more games than maybe we would have thought they would have been only a day ago. I want to talk about some of the other stuff that happened in this game, a little of the chippiness that was going on. Thought we were going to end up getting a little throwdown. Ends up not happening. We'll talk about that here in first. I'll tell you about our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. You got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs is the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. It's a vast network, more than 1 billion professionals, makes it the best place to hire, gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows small businesses are wearing so many hats. They might not have the time or the resources to hire, constantly finding ways to make the process easier. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, close it out here. Just overall more energy for the team. Obviously, this is a team that's been down pretty bad over the course of the year. Don't need to read the record again, though I will. 25-39, finding themselves still on the outside, looking in when it comes to the playing game. You know, some of these guys, and I saw this from Matt Moore, who does Locked On Nuggets, hardwood paroxysm. He was responding to something, another tweet over the weekend where he's talking about, and this is following the Hornets game, where it was mentioning, you know, this was a collection of guys. It was kind of debate about whether the team was bad or it was just like a collection of guys who might know that they're not going to be here next year. Like this is maybe a group that sort of knows what their fate is on a player level, right? That knows that, well, maybe it's just going to be Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson and maybe Cam Thomas and everyone else. You know, what's their future? Like, are they going to resign Nick Claxton? We don't know. Like DFS, is he going to get traded at some point? We're not really sure. Is this just a collection of sort of parts that have been assembled and not really a cohesive team? I thought that was like an interesting take. I don't think I necessarily agree with it, but I do think that there's something to be said for the understanding that this version of the team isn't like the long-term version of it. And that's a little bit of a weird spot. Combine that with just like the overall lack of talent that they have probably comparatively, to the rest of the NBA. And you just have this weird sort of mashup of issues that are going on with the team. And I think that's kind of presented itself at times with lack of energy. Kevin Ollie was really pretty annoyed after the Hornets game, where he was talking about in his post-game presser, was talking about just like they weren't just doing the little things. Like he specifically mentions 50-50 balls. And he's like, I don't think we won a single 50-50 ball against that Hornets team. Right. And like, those are things that you can watch as a fan. And even, you know, you don't need to know X's and O's to know if a team is, you know, hustling for the ball. Like I think you don't need to have sort of deep dive into the game tape to know if they're running, like what kind of actions they're running, to know if like the team's just a 50-50 ball is right there and they're not getting to it. We can all see that. You know, you don't need to dive into the tape when you're just getting crushed on the defensive glass because the other team's got a ton of offensive rebounds. So you don't need to be a high level X's and O's guy to understand that stuff. And I think that's some of the stuff that we hadn't seen from this team a lot. There was more energy tonight. Sometimes it helps when you jump out to leads and you can maybe feel like you have a chance to win the game. That energy can begin running a little bit of downhill. But there was definitely some chippiness in this game as well, right? Like almost got a fight early on between Nick Claxton and Georges Niang, who I was actually pretty surprised that Niang didn't get. I mean, I thought at first he might get ejected, right? He clearly throws down Claxton and then steps over, like sort of stands over him posturing. Now, personally, I don't really care too much about this stuff. It's like sports. It's physical, like whatever. These guys get heated. It's not something that bothers me, but like just by the letter of the law in the NBA, I thought that was probably close to grounds for ejection or like at least a flagrant. They end up just both getting techs. I think Claxton's tech was more because he ran into the referee as he sort of starts to go after Niang. I had forgotten the S broadcast did a good job with this, that these guys had some history from last year in that playoff series where he steps over Niang. So I think Niang clearly like still had that in his head, right? It was almost like an exact 1-for-1 of what he did. It was almost like he planned it, right? Like it was so almost premeditated because him throwing Claxton to the ground felt like totally out of nowhere in the context of that play. Unless I was missing something, it looked like he sort of planned like, hey, when we're gonna get mixed up here under the basket, I'm gonna throw him to the ground, because I kind of remember what happened last year. There was some stuff that happened in the France game too, right, where Tristan Thompson runs into him after he's talking, Claxton's talking to Niang. So there's like clearly some history. But I thought like, early on watching that, look, I'm a pacifist, right? I don't want I don't want there to be fights. So no one should fight with anybody, especially over sports. That being said, the part where the Nets show a little fire from situations like that is kind of what the team needs also, right? Like a little bit of a spark, a little bit of a come together moment, a little bit of like, hey, something might happen here. There's some chippiness in the game. It's physical. The first half took absolutely forever because of all the fouls. Like there's a physical nature to it. So I think that like this team probably is benefited from just like a little bit of a wake up call, like a shove, get a guy thrown to the ground, right? Like mix it up some stuff that we just haven't seen too much, which I get. Look, the teams, when you lose a ton of games, it's really, really tough to keep a certain energy alive. And maybe that's maybe that's like the cycle of it, right? Like they have low energy because they're losing, and then it's hard to have high energy because you're losing, and this stuff kind of just begins to sort of cycle like in on itself, and you can't find your way out of, or spiral, and you can't really find your way out of it. But I thought that that physicality, that chippiness early did help this team sort of galvanize around maybe an idea that, like, hey, let's win this game, right? Like these guys, that Niang throwing Claxton down, it's like, hey, we really can't have stuff like that. So I did wonder early on when that happened. I thought, as much as I hate this stuff and I don't want anyone to throw down or anything like that, and I'm glad they didn't. That part of the game where that happened, I thought, maybe this is not the worst thing for this team. Maybe this team needs a little bit of this. Maybe they need to have someone like step over them a little bit in the posturing and say, hey, I'm not going to allow this stuff to happen. And look, that could be me making up the story, but it did seem to have somewhat of that effect over the course of this game. Claxton ends up with 16 and 10, 3 assists. He has a steal too. Obviously, he's going against Jared Allen. Jared Allen with 15 and 9 overall in the game. So like they kind of are evenly matched. I thought that no one really had the clear advantage there, which is a good sign for Claxton, I think, considering Jared Allen's played really, really well, especially without Evan Mobley in the game. They were able to mostly kind of like make sure Darius Garland was a non-factor, 14 points, 5 assists for him. Really, it was like Niang that was like the one that was keeping the Cavs in the game even more than the blowout that they already were handed, right? He leads the team with 20 and was able to hit some threes that kind of kept them close. But really, overall, the Cavs really weren't able to do all that much against the Nets. Like the Nets kind of had it figured out. Again, super high level offense now. Garland, LeVert, Isaac Okoro, Niang, Jared Allen. It's not like that's 2/5 of their starting line, their regular starting lineup is in the game here. But overall, the defensive effort from an energy level, I thought was pretty good overall for the Nets, right? Like they were able to not lose too many shooters. That's been a problem for a lot of these games. There's losing shooters and lack of rotations all over the place. They weren't really too hurt with that tonight. They were able to defend that Allen pick and roll lob stuff moderately well, like, right, 11 shots for him in 29 minutes. So I think overall you feel pretty good about that effort on the defensive end as well. So from a Net standpoint, look, we are in that part of the season. It's still going to be tough for them to make this play in, even with how Atlanta's playing. You know what I meant? Yeah. So Atlanta loses tonight to the Pelicans, 116-103. Nets find themselves 3.5 back for the play-in, still within reach. They could still get there. Those losses against the Hornets and the Grizzlies do really, really hurt. Obviously, we'll probably look back if they miss. Well, there's a lot of games we can look back, but these ones, like this section where they probably should have won some of these games, if they don't end up making the play-in, we'll see it. But hopefully a game like this, able to build off some of the energy, able to build off the fact that if Mikal and Cam Thomas are both scoring, this team can hang with other teams, able to build off that starting lineup over the last couple of games since Cam Thomas has been back, has been really far into the positive. There are pieces of this stuff that I think the Nets can hold on to here for the last 18 games, and that's the great hope, obviously. All right, we're going to get out of here. Nice win on a Sunday night. Nice to see them back in the W column. Nice to see the scorers get into this thing. Nice to see the Nets bring the energy as well. Make sure you go to WeGotNets.com. Grab a free copy of that ebook. 5 stories in 5 days about the Brooklyn Nets. Much appreciated everyone that's jumped in and grabbed a copy of that. Adam and I will be back again early this week talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball. We always get to this part of the show when I do the solos. Adam is always the one that comes up with the quotes from the great American poets. He always ends it with a perfect quote that's completely and utterly sums up exactly everything that we talked about in this episode. And I always get to this part and I forget to look one up. I wouldn't be able to do as good a job as him anyway. So as I always say at these ones, Adam Armbrecht, one of the great American poets. We'll be back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.